number one, to say thank you very much for trying to figure out how to do this. I know it's very difficult for all of us, and we're so glad that you're here. What we're doing right now, of course, is waiting for some of the other candidates who haven't signed in yet. I'm sure they're struggling to do so, and we'll be hearing from them pretty soon. But to begin our meeting, as we always do, we'd like to begin with our pledges of allegiance. So with that, Raul, if we could get started. Ladies and gentlemen, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now our Texas pledge. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible. At this time, I would like to thank our extremely high-tech people that are helping us put this program on. Raul from the District 10 office and former Councilman John Clamp, who is here. And Councilman Clamp has with him something very, very important. Sir, if you'll display that on your screen, Councilman Clamp has the stop sign. And what we'll use the stop sign for is when each of us have finished our 2 minutes of talking, we'll have the stop go up. Actually, we'll put it up just about 10 seconds early. That way gives you time to wind up whatever very important comments you're going to be making at the time. Is that clear to everybody? Very good. Well, I think rather than have the audience have to wait for everyone to get here, what I would like to do is to start out and just go down the line with the folks that are here and ask them to talk about their backgrounds. In other words, what makes them qualified to be running for this position? And after that occurs, we want to talk about what their plans are going to be. So let's start off. First of all, let's see. We have with us for the state representative position, that is for District 121, our two candidates are Steve Allison and Celina Montoya. And Celina's here. She's joined us. And I would like, Celina, if you don't mind, to answer the question, how is it that you are qualified for this position?
Well, good evening. Thank you so much for having us here. My name is Celina Montoya, and I'm running to be your next state representative. I was raised in San Antonio, right here in House District 121. I grew up with 6 brothers and sisters, cared for by who taught us the lessons of hard work and sacrifice. And I remember going in there on the weekends to paint homes with my classmates. It wasn't easy, but she did everything she could to make sure that we had a fair shot at success. Because of her, I got my fair shot. And I ended up graduating at the top of my class in Alamo Heights, went on to earn a degree in journalism from Northwestern University. And in 2006, I returned home to San Antonio to work for Texas Public Radio. I helped create a local nonprofit focusing on our city's rising illiteracy rates. And I currently work in our family-owned small business. I am deeply committed to this community. I've previously served as the president of the Junior League of San Antonio. I'm the co-chair of the Women and Girls Development Fund, a part of the San Antonio Area Foundation, and a board member of the San Antonio Public Library Foundation. I've been fortunate to see what life is like from many different perspectives from 121. And one thing that's very clear to me is that not all people are feeling that they have that fair shot anymore. For over 20 years, our state's been controlled by one party with a single static vision, and it's time that we ask for change. Can you guys still see me? Okay, suddenly when it all went blank, I apologize for that, but the vision remains the same. It's one that's clear. It's one where we can include expansion of Medicaid and protect the Affordable Care Act. It's also one where we support our small businesses. We equitably and fully fund our schools and support teachers, but also lower the property tax burdens for homeowners. We can protect our environment and remain a global leader in energy. How? By electing leadership that's done the hard work, already pulled themselves up out of hardship, and completed the task time and time again like I have, by electing leaders who've worked in some of the most underserved parts of our community like I have, and who aren't afraid of the hard conversations that lie ahead, by electing leaders who aren't beholden to corporate PACs, special interests, or lobbyists. Because like you, I'm a mom, I'm a wife, I'm a homeowner, I'm a taxpayer. And like you, I see that Texas is changing. And I believe it's time our leadership changed. I'm saying let's change the face of power in Austin. My name is Celina Montoya, and I humbly ask for your vote. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Raul, have we heard from Steve yet?
No, sir, I haven't.
I'm here.
Oh,
There he is.
I'm here.
Okay, Steve, you need to adjust your camera just a little bit. We got to get all of you. Okay, what we've asked right now, Steve, is the first question, and that I think you probably heard before, and that is, how are you qualified for this job?
Thanks, Mike, very much, and thanks for this opportunity. You know, my wife and I have lived in this community for over 45 years. I raised our two boys here, went through the public schools. I've been actively involved in the community, in chamber activities, in education for many years. I had the privilege of serving on the Alamite School Board for 12 years, served 3 terms as president. Made some great strides and great improvements to make that district what it is. I served on the Texas Association of School Boards for 3 years, on the legislative committee, very active in the legislature throughout that period, both in the school district and as the representative of the Texas Association of School Boards. I served the 8 years on the VIA board, serving the last 2 years as vice chairman of the board. So I'm intimately familiar with transportation needs and transportation infrastructure. I had the privilege this last session of serving as your state representative, and I think we had a very successful session. I was not the ordinary freshman. I pushed the envelope quite a bit because I think that's what this district deserved. And I watched out for the interests of this district above any private agendas, any political agendas, and did what I thought was in the best interest of this district and this community. And I intend to continue that. I've been active in business. I'm an attorney. I've been a business attorney and healthcare attorney for over 45 years. I have extensive knowledge and background in those areas. I was fortunate enough to be appointed to the Public Education Committee and the Public Health Committee, 2 committees that I requested because of my background and experience in those areas. I was very pleased with the progress we made in education, long overdue. I've fought school finance, dealt with school finance and education reform for many, many years. And we made some very, very progressive moves in that direction this last session, but we need to continue. We need to continue both in the academic realm to provide a quality education for each and every one of our children in the state of Texas, but also for the workforce development. There's such a unique connection between education and workforce, and we need to look at that as we move forward.
Yeah, Steve, let me interrupt you on that point, because what I want you to do now is talk about what those goals are if you're reelected.
Okay. Thanks, Mike. My goals are to continue in education. We still have a ways to go. And this pandemic has pointed out some of the shortcomings we have. The digital divide became very, very evident and something that we needed to address. We came very close to passing a broadband bill last session, but failed. The rural needs are tremendous in the broadband area, but the pandemic pointed out more and more how we need it to address it in the education cycle. We need to continue moving forward in education. The state needs to contribute more to the cost of education. We made a big step this last session, but we're not even halfway there. The state used to provide the fully funded education. It quickly dropped down to 98%, then down to the 70s, and down to the, before the last session, 38%. We moved it up to about 45 to 46%, but need to keep moving. And as we move that education funding up, our property taxes are affected and come down. That's a number 2 goal that was highlighted even more again by the pandemic. That was one of my campaign issues last time, that we addressed property taxes. We did, but I can't say that it was in a satisfactory way. We was very transparent, and that was important, but it was just an initial step. And we need to go back and do more in property tax to get the relief that our constituents and the public needs. It's pointed out even more, like I said, by the pandemic. Those that were already hurting are hurting more because of the pandemic, property tax wise. So we need to address that. And the way we need to address it is by looking at the appraisal system. The city and the county have rightfully so bragged about not raising our taxes in many, many years. Well, they haven't needed to because the appraisals keep going up so drastically. And that in turn results in the tax increase. So even though this last session in the property tax bill, we put a cap of 3.5%. Well, even 3.5% is still a tax increase, particularly when you factor in the appraisals. So my intention is this next session, and we're already working on the crafting of the bill, to address the appraisal system, to try to get some realistic and real property tax relief. Beyond that, healthcare. Healthcare remains a critical need in Texas and throughout the country. And we need to continue looking at ways to provide additional access to healthcare, to quality healthcare for all of our citizens. We made some great strides this last session, but enough. We need to go back and do that some more. Safety, both in our schools and in our public, are an important aspect, again, raised by the pandemic and other issues that have developed. So school safety, public safety are going to be primary goals this next session.
Very good. Thank you very much, Steve. Now, Celina, if you'll answer the same question, what are your major goals during this time?
I would start with healthcare, actually. The expansion of Medicaid right now is one of the things that we can do to ensure that not only millions more Texans have the coverage they need, but it would also help ensure that we can protect the Affordable Care Act, do things like ensure that our prescription drugs are negotiated at a price that is actually affordable to those of us who need them. I would follow that up by ensuring that we are protecting the lives of the many women. Texas has the highest maternal mortality rate in the nation, followed with also one of the highest infant mortality rates in the nation. And if you look at that comparatively globally, we're not doing much better there. This is a number one issue where Texas cannot afford to be number one. I would follow that up certainly with our education. SB 3 was certainly a good step in the right direction, but the reality is there was no new money in that bill. We need to make sure that we are actually putting our money where our mouth is and not putting it at the expense of property owners. We need to start looking at the rainy day fund as an opportunity to use. We've done it before. Why don't we do it again? We need to be creative with our revenue streams. We know that we're heading into a deficit. We know that we are not likely to have the type of revenue that we've had and that we've experienced in the past. We need to make up for the growth that we've lost. Some economics professors and experts are saying that it'll take up to 2 years for us to recover just to be back at 2019 levels. We need to start thinking very strategically about the future and what the growth in this economy is going to look like. We cannot afford to leave anyone behind. That means looking at green jobs, apprenticeships, a school to workforce pipeline that goes beyond college and looks at pre-professional and apprenticeship programs. That means that we need to have representatives who are not only who understand what it is to go straight to work, but also those who understand what it is to be in that working class as well. And that's what I intend to fight for.
Okay, thank you very much, Celina. We now have a very controversial question that one of the neighbors has asked, and I hope both of you are prepared to try to answer this one. Would you please give us your position on Alamo redo and moving the cenotaph? And Celina, we'll start with you.
Certainly. As someone who is a native San Antonian, as someone who has admired the Alamo and the heroes who've fallen there, I think it's important that we honor their legacy. And part of that legacy is ensuring that that history is something that's available to everyone and accessible to all those who call themselves San Antonians. What we don't have right now is an opportunity for people to engage in the experience and history that is there and is so deeply rooted in our community. While I understand that there are concerns in moving the cenotaph, and I understand there are concerns associated with that, I do think that if the real root of this is to ensure that we are preserving our history and we are making it available to all those who want to learn, then we need to trust those who are part of that historical association, who are part of that movement, and who live and work and pay their respects in the downtown area, have their voices heard. The Alamo is several miles away from where I'm sitting right here. It's not something I have the opportunity to see every day. And so if we can make it more accessible to people, then I think that's something that would enable not just those who are in school today, but those who are in school in the future and who visit this lovely city to enjoy that. So that's my position.
Very good. Now we'll ask Steve, what is your position on the Alamo redo and also moving the cenotaph?
Okay, thank you. I've spent time on this, and it's amazing in some respect, the emotion that is developed on both sides of this issue. I have received countless emails and phone calls from those who are opposed to the Alamo plan and particularly moving the cenotaph. And then more recently, a flood of emails supporting the plan, vehemently supporting the plan. So these are constituents in the district. Where do you draw the line, so to speak, with a bad Alamo analogy? I've talked to the chairman of the Texas Historical Commission about the project. Went through an exhaustive process involving many community leaders, community people, to develop the plan that's proposed at the present time. I spent time visiting with him about moving the cenotaph. If it really needed to be moved, if it could be repaired in place, recognizing apparently the consensus that it does need to be repaired, it does need to be corrected. The issue remains, can it be removed and repaired safely? Can it be repaired and corrected in place? Talk to the land office about the situation. As I think we know, tomorrow the Historical Commission is going to make the final decision. And I think we need to accept that decision and abide by it. I think the purpose is to preserve the Alamo itself and the battlefield and the monument that it stands for. And that should be our ultimate goal.
Okay, thank you very much, Steve. We appreciate that. We've got one final, and I just need a quick response from each of you on this one while we still have the time. And that is, Steve, we'll go with you first, and that is on infrastructure funding. What is your position about toll roads? Heard of those before?
I think I've heard of those. I spent, like I said, I spent 8 years on the VIA board, so I'm very familiar with transportation infrastructure, the toll road debate, the need for transportation infrastructure in San Antonio as we continue to grow. And I'm satisfied that toll roads are not the answer, that we don't need to go in that direction. I'm not sure where we'd put them if we did. And I've been very impressed. I've spent a lot of time visiting with TxDOT about the plans that are in place. The extension and expansion of 281 that is progressing nicely. The plans for IH-10, the ongoing expansion now that's going on in 10, the longer range plans for the intersection at 10 and 1604, the expansion of 1604 from Bandera Road to IH-35 to 10 lanes, the development of the intersection and interchange at Harry Wurzbach and Austin Highway. I think all of those are going to address our needs and greatly improve the transportation infrastructure and improve our mobility and connectivity that's going to be so vitally important.
Thank you. And Celina, your position on infrastructure funding for Texas, and also specifically, what do you think about toll roads?
So I think everyone knows there's miles and miles across this beautiful state, and having traveled a number of them and having had the experience of coming back home from a road trip only to find an envelope asking for a payment to a toll road has certainly been a surprising welcome home that I'm sure I'm not the only one who's experienced. I don't believe that toll roads are the answer for this, but I also know that when it comes to the infrastructure funding of this state, it's something that we've kicked down the road too many times. It's something that we need to think seriously about, and it's one where we need to start thinking about more innovative ways when it comes to transportation. How can we ensure that the roads, the streets, the cars that are on our roads are not only up to standard, but also that the roads we have are in fact able to have the capacity for them. It goes beyond the expansion of the roads, and it's really more about having something that's going to be sustainable. We've already paid these taxes to build these roads and to maintain them. Let's start looking at ideas on things that don't cost us more money, but rather ensure that we have a plan that is going to be sustainable.
Very good. Well, I'd like to thank both of you very much for your input today. I know at your level it is very, very difficult, all of the issues that you have to deal as state representatives. So thank you very much for joining us. And if you can stay with us towards the end of the meeting, we may have some time for some wrap-up comments, okay? So let's go ahead and move on now to Bexar County Sheriff. That's something that's been in the news a lot lately. And we'll go ahead and start with the individual who was shown up to represent the office of Bexar County Sheriff. We have with us, first of all, Gerry Rickhoff. Gerry, welcome aboard this evening. And we'll begin by asking you, how is it you are qualified to run for this position?
Well, first, Mr. Gallagher, I want to thank you and your association for putting this forum together. It's much appreciated and needed in our community. I'm qualified for this office. I'm a professional administrator. I'm a 6-term countywide elected official. I ran the county clerk's office as a record-setting and award-winning clerk. I brought technology in. I brought touchscreen voting here. I was the treasurer of Bexar County. I counted billions of dollars in tax revenues and all sources of income. Also took the land records to the cloud, where we got rid of the library downtown. Anybody could look at their deed of their house at no charge at this time. I've been a professional educator as well for 7 years on the south side of San Antonio. I taught to children from Sky Harbor, Indian Creek, and Hidden Cove. And if anybody knows this town, you'll know that that's a very severe part of San Antonio that needs many assets to be added to it. But I think my professional administration of 24 years successfully running the county clerk's office, where I was clerk to 15 judges, clerk to the commissioner's court. I took care of the land records. I issued 1,000 marriage licenses a month, and I took care of all probate matters as well as all mental health for all of South Texas.
Very good. We'd now like to ask you, what, if elected, would be your goals as sheriff?
Well, the first thing, we want to reestablish the community's feeling about how they feel about the sheriff's office and how we're doing policing. Oftentimes, elected officials go into office unprepared for the sacrifice that is made. We've seen a failed leadership in the present person that's there. Mr. Salazar has demonstrated a lack of communication with this community. He's lost the faith of this community. He's lost the faith of the men and women that serve under his command. Anybody who's watched the media over the past 3.5 years have witnessed arrest of the officers, family violence, DWIs, escapes from the jail, suicides. It's been a litany of failed behaviors, and it comes from the leadership at the top. That's what I offer, is leadership and credibility. I challenge the present sheriff to return the $45,000 campaign contribution he took from the radio contractor. Other sheriffs have been indicted for these activities. All other politicians return those funds or donated them to charity. I challenge Mr. Salazar tonight to return those funds. It's inappropriate for him to take that kind of money from the very radio contract that he's supposed to oversee.
Thank you for those comments. I now ask, I noticed that it looks like Sheriff Salazar is having difficulty signing in. Sheriff Salazar, are you here yet? Okay, we still don't have feedback from him. So let me go ahead and address a couple of the issues you touched on just a second ago. Gerry, and see what your comments are on them. Number one, on the jail issues, would you talk a little bit about the suicides, the escapes, and the nonviolent releases that have been made?
Well, I've been universally acclaimed and award-winning for using technology to resolve certain governmental issues. Oftentimes what we see is rocks in the water where data cannot stream. If we don't release these prisoners through bail bond or mag them quickly, they lose their job. If you don't appear in 3 days, you're terminated. That's a family that just cratered. We have to streamline the data stream, whether we mag them with the city or magistrate them with the county. We've got to look at ways to streamline that system. It's inefficient to have 60% of the prisoners in our Comal County Jail, which is about 4,000 people, that have not been administered by a judge, which means they haven't had their day in court. What they've had is a mag court, which is not a court of record. I want to end the escapes. I want to use technology to reduce the suicide. There's no question that sensors could be used, cameras can be used. As far as the infection of the COVID, there are machines that are made here in San Antonio that the hospitals use to decontaminate quarters, especially quarters that are used by people that suffer from this horrible affliction that we see going through society. We need that machine in the jail. The other thing we need is to correct the morale. What I see Mr. Salazar doing is treating the symptoms of the stress. You need to treat the disease. We need to reach out and receive the benefit of full employment. He's short over 230 people on his staff. He had to go to commissioner's court to ask for $10 million in overtime pay. These officers are working double shifts. It's problems in the managerial part of the office. That's where I offer professional administrative experience that can resolve these. I have a record of working with commissioner's court and large budgets in Bexar County.
Okay, thank you very much, Gerry. We'll now turn. We've got Sheriff Salazar with us. Welcome aboard, sir.
Thank you so much.
I know you've had to join us a little bit later for technical difficulties, but I need to start because we've asked all of the candidates this question to get you started with, and that is number one, how is it you're qualified for this position? And then number two, what are your goals if you're reelected?
Well, sir, I've been protecting and serving this community for 28 years. First, as a sanitary officer, climbed my way up through the rank to the rank of sergeant. 8 years of my life in administration, and been, of course, Bexar County Sheriff for the last 4 years now. Since I've been sheriff, we've done much with regard to building relationships in the community, building crime prevention, improving the means by which we assure the integrity of the agency, building up units such as Public Integrity Unit, expansion of the Internal Affairs Division. We've also been blessed in adding jobs at the Bexar County jail programs to reduce recidivism, whereas the rate in the rest of the country is 50 around 78. Bexar County Jail, we've reduced to about 50%, doubling our jail programs that are change their behavior while in the Bexar County Jail. They come in as quite frankly tax consumers, and they emerge taxpayers because of the job training programs and interview skills that we teach them while they're there with us. As far as the law enforcement side of the house, 2 brand new substations that have allowed us to better reduce response times, get to our calls for service quicker, and of course address crime. We've built unit, the Special Victims Unit at the Sheriff's Office, which cares for, of course, violent crime victims, and we cleared our rape kit backlog. We've implemented new technology at the Sheriff's Office to include tactical robot technology, drone technologies, and a whole host of others, not the least of which body camera technology. We've gotten first fully functional body camera system off the using the Axon. Is my time up?
Yes, sir, it is. Thank you very much. We appreciate that introduction. I'll now go ahead and go to you with probably one of the most difficult questions that you've had to deal with, and that is the DWIs that we've seen among the deputies. Could you address that and say what's being done to solve that issue?
Oh, absolutely. Last week, ASAT did a story on the very thing. To see Dylan Collier doing a positive piece on me was actually a breath of. So, a misinformed opponent mentioned that we're dealing with just the symptoms of it. Actually, nothing could be further from the truth. We've had to arrest a deputy and show them the door. Absolutely, and it's something that I don't mind doing. But I like to address things at the source of it. So one of the things that we did, it was a controversy. We implemented Alcoholics at the, which by the way doubled our in-service spend at the academy every year. But we started alcoholics teach classes. In addition to that, we brought on the first ever psychologist onto the staff at the sheriff's office. So if you look, 2018 was the high point of that, or the low point, whichever way. And as of this year, we've only had one deputy arrested for DUI. That's one too many as far as I'm concerned, but it's certainly worlds apart from where we were as an agency. I want to continue to improve upon that.
Okay, let's go ahead now and ask Gerry, what is your position about the DWIs among the deputy sheriff?
Well, I think we have to reduce the pain and suffering that the ranks are suffering from. You have to address the underlying sources of tension dynamic. These are young people that are fleeing the sheriff's office in record numbers. His retention of staff is very poor. He's had 4 jailers in 3.5 years. 8 of his 10 command staff has left his employ. One of his chief deputies is running against him as a write-in. There's 238 vacancies within the sheriff's office, requiring volumes of overtime that are unprecedented in Bexar County. I believe that we can initiate programs that reduce the stresses. These young people that come into the sheriff's office have certain needs. They need counseling with housing, relationship problems. We know that these deputies suffer from high incidence of emotional distress with their significant others. We have to address that. We address that by giving them a place to take their children when they have separation issues. We make sure that they have housing. We make sure when their car breaks down and they can't afford a new one that we go to a used car dealer association, and we make sure that we put them in a car so they can get to work. Their children are taken care of. Their housing needs are met. This is what reduces the stress that these people are suffering under when they're low-paid jailers. That's why they're fleeing the employment. That's why we're suffering. That's why the leadership at the top is the answer. Mr. Salazar has not addressed this endemic leaving of the office of these trained deputies. This is at great expense to the county that we train these people.
Okay, thank you very much, Gerry. I now have to move on to one very important and current issue that both of you need to address. And Gerry, you can start an answer on it. And that is this business that police departments throughout the nation have been accused of, and that has to do with profiling and also physical restraint that has caused serious problems among these police departments. If you, Gerry, would go ahead and start with what you would do with these issues.
Well, I think common sense dictates that real power is the discretion of power. The first thing you want to do is use minimal force. But if its force is required to protect the public security of this community, then we have to go to whatever sanctions are required in a given circumstance. If they're marking property or they're damaging sheriff's deputies' property, I understand the present sheriff told the men to stand down when they were graffitiing a workman's car on the way to work at the jail. I think we have to take a firm hand on these things, and defunding the police is not the way we want to go in this community at this time.
Okay, and Javier, what is your position on this very, what would I say, busy issue that's before the media right now that has to do with racial profiling, physical restraint, and the effects of it, and so forth?
Well, it goes well beyond anything that Rickhoff may have mentioned. It starts with recruiting the right kinds of folks that be in this business. We've got our recruiting team that puts our applicants through a 16 selection process. The vast majority of folks that apply for the agency do not get in. And so, yes, while I do have about 48 vacancies in the sheriff's office, not 238 as reported by Mr. Rickhoff, I've got 148. We could absolutely eliminate those next month by relaxing standards to the point where we're taking in anybody with a pulse. But unfortunately, this agency has been down that road before, and it's not something that I do. And so we've got some growing pains in that we're being selective to bring in. You've got to make sure that policies are such a way that they paint people into a corner and put them to a certain conduct, and then that you're training them right. We've expanded our training to the 40 hours that I mentioned annually. When I took over the sheriff's office, we were about 20 hours a year at the state minimum, but I came from the 40 cycle, and so we went to that. So you've got to train right off. We have detention academy in the state of Texas at about 10 weeks. And so we're making sure that our deputies are immersed in the training environment. We train them heavily on what we call ethical policing is a program that we adopted in the city of New Orleans. And so is courageous deputies to step in and intervene if and when they see a acting improperly, whether it be simple rudeness on up to civil regulations. We also have a intervene within our policies. Now, with that being said, we preventive approach to the point that it's necessary. However, at a certain point, you do have to show the door and deprive uniformed officers of the freedom if need. That's something I don't mind doing, as I mentioned. But if I can use any other measures that I've implemented to prevent it, then I'd much take that approach for sure.
Thank you very much. I'd now like to wrap up this session for our sheriff candidates with one that not only affects you, but also our county commissioners will have to address this too. And that is this recent cutback of constables. And I know that it looks like the sheriff's department will have to fill in the blanks if indeed that happens. So let's go ahead and Sheriff, we'll start with you. What is your thoughts on cutting back on constables here in Bexar County?
Well, that's within the purview of the commissioners to cut positions, to reallocate positions where they see fit, and absolutely they put some measures in place where I may be able to recruit some of those folks over into the sheriff's office. In fact, I was talking to the constable precinct 2 of the 6 cuts that she has made. 2 of them look like really good candidates for the sheriff's office. In fact, they used to work there once before. And so we're in the process of bringing them right back over to the sheriff's office. With them, it'll be a pretty easy fit because they've worked there before. They're familiar with the rank structure. They're familiar with the policies. It may just be give them some refreshers and then bring them on over. But the fact is, of the 19 positions that the commissioners cut, I'd like to bring most of those folks over if they qualify. Now, remember, my qualifications are a little bit different than the constables. I did actually make it tougher to get into the sheriff's office. I made our civil service rules a lot more restrictive. And so the fact is, unfortunately, some folks that get cut over there may not qualify to get into the sheriff's office, but those that do, I'd welcome them with open arms for sure.
Thank you very much. And Gerry, what is your position on this business of cutting back constables? Raul, we need to get a sound on Gerry.
Okay, there we go. Yeah, it's hard to second guess what the commissioners had as far as data to make their determination. So I hate to armchair quarterback after the fact. But if it's a taxpayer relief, then let's go forward with it. The ship of state only moves 1 or 2% at a time. So if this is an advance, let's embrace it and move on by not resisting what is a natural process. If the workload isn't there, then the men shouldn't be on the payroll. That's an obvious choice for taxpayers. And I think Mr. Salazar is correct. To accept them into other law enforcement positions would be a smart move.
I like it when I hear candidates agreeing on something. That's really great. Okay, gentlemen, good job for both of you. Now let's move on to County Commissioner Precinct 3, a very interesting race. And we have with us Christine Hortick. I don't think, has Trish joined us yet? Raul, I don't think she signed in. She made it? Okay, well, we'll see. All right, well, we'll go ahead and start with Christine. And you've heard the other candidates now. Let's go ahead and talk. Number one, Christine, tell us about how it is you were qualified for this position as County Commissioner Precinct 3.
Thank you, Mike, for having us here this evening. It's nice to be able to have some sort of forum given the current circumstances with the pandemic. I am a longtime resident of Precinct 3. I'm a mom of 2 young school-age children. I'm an attorney. I've been a practicing attorney for almost 15 years. For the last 10 years or so, I have focused my law practice on children's court cases. So I work with children and parents in abuse and neglect cases. And in doing that type of work, I think I've been in a very unique position to work with people in the community and see the different issues that many are dealing with these days. Before I became an attorney, I used to work as a congressional aide for Senator Ted Kennedy in his Boston office. While I was there, I worked on Veterans Affairs matters. So I have worked advocating for members of the community for almost 20 years now. I'm running on a platform of 3 main issues. My first point is healthy families. So I want to make sure that we're doing all we can to meet the needs of our families, both physically and mentally. My second point was smart transportation. It's estimated that Bexar County is going to grow by 1 million people in the next 20 years. And so I think it's very important that we address that growing stress on our infrastructure and that we work to address those issues now. My final point is durable community. And when I say that, I mean that we need to focus on infrastructure. We need to focus on basic needs for the community, such as making sure that our residents are employed and they're in the best possible position to compete for local jobs.
Well, thank you very much. Let's now hear from Trish DeBerry. It looks like you're here. Welcome aboard.
Thank you, Mike.
Our first question we've asked all the candidates, and that is, how is it, are you qualified for this position? And secondly, what are your goals if you are elected?
Well, first of all, thank you for the opportunity to address not only yourself, but the members of the Northeast Neighborhood Alliance. I am a born and raised San Antonio citizen, raised in the precinct, lived all over the precinct, and so certainly think I am familiar with the opportunities and the challenges associated with the precinct. I'm the daughter of an Air Force veteran. My mother worked in civil service at Fort Sam, the old Kelly Field, if people remember those days. But, you know, taught me a lot about hard work and ethics and really the importance of education. So I've been a small business owner most of my life, the better part of 25 years. And the reason why I'm running for this office is I really feel like Commissioner's Court needs a pragmatic business skill set on the court. Somebody who has had to meet a payroll, somebody who's had to sign not just the back of a paycheck, but the front of a paycheck, somebody who's had to deal with escalating health insurance premiums on an annual basis. That pragmatic business skill set is needed more than ever on the court right now, especially in an economic downturn. You want somebody who has navigated profit and loss statements, has had to scrub budgets, cut wasteful spending, looked at cutting legacy projects. Those are all the things that I do on a daily basis. And so from a platform standpoint, what I want to get across is when I've been at the doorstep talking to people very safely with a mask on and social distancing, what comes up all the time is what? Property taxes, property taxes, property taxes. Precinct 3 pays more than 40% of the property taxes in the county. I'm going to dig into appraisal reform. I want to see that the board of directors of the appraisal district is elected and not appointed, so the taxpayers have a bigger voice, at the appraisal district. And we need to really dig into traffic and what that looks like. But most importantly, and I've got some ideas around that later, but with my business skill set, we're going to be laser focused on jumpstarting this economy and putting people back to work.
Well, thank you very much. We appreciate those comments. I'd now like to move to some specific subjects. and this is going to be tough for both of you because these are ones right now that we're getting a lot of comments from the neighborhoods on. And we'll start number one, and that is with the problems with infrastructure that affect the city, the county, and the state. What are your positions? And we'll go ahead and start with you, Trish, on this. What is your positions on how those can be remedied, those problems?
Yeah.
And what are those problems?
Mm-hmm. Well, as I talked about it, and I was block walking and taking the campaign to the doorstep in the Stone Oak area this weekend, they talked about congestion. They talked about traffic. You know, Commissioner's Court has a lot of purview over transportation and infrastructure. The county acts as like a funnel. Federal dollars, state dollars, local dollars come into play. So it's all about where our priorities and what is the return on investment. And if we are identifying the pain points for folks across the precinct. Precinct is a very large one, 526,000 people, almost the size of a congressional district. So we're only going to have growth problems associated with people wanting to live in the precinct. If you look at pain points like Northwest Military Highway and Wurzbach Parkway, there are 40,000 cars that are going through that intersection every single day. If you look at Blanco, north of 1604, interjurisdictional issues because the county owns some of that, the city owns some of it, TxDOT owns some of it. We've got to be able to all come to the table, and we've got to be able to leverage dollars associated with the priority on that project. Bulverdian 1604, another pain point. You know, I've already had conversations about what I would consider shovel-ready projects that will put people back to work from a transportation standpoint. I think as we look across the precinct, there are plenty of opportunities to be able to create jobs for people, particularly with infrastructure projects. The other point I want to make is there are a lot of municipalities that are located within the precinct, like 6 or 8, Alamo Heights, Terrell Hills, Almas Park, Capitol Hill, Chavana Park. All of those folks have flood control issues. So we need to be meeting regularly with those folks and looking at leveraging monetary opportunities associated with infrastructure improvements across the precinct.
Okay, very good. And now if you could address the same issues, Christine.
Yes, thanks. It's going to be very important that I think that we are forward thinking, that we are looking to the future and planning appropriately. We need to make sure that we're allocating the proper amount of resources in the county budget so that we can complete all the necessary projects that we need to keep our residents safe. Part of the infrastructure issue in Precinct 3 is transportation, and transportation is a complicated issue. Roads are only part of the solution to the transportation issue. They're always going to be a major part of the plan, but we need to be innovative and we need to be forward thinking, and we need to work with our local stakeholders and work with AMPO, via Metropolitan Transit, others within the community to make sure that we are attacking the issue of transportation and moving people around the county in the best light possible. Like I said, this is a large issue that the county alone cannot do. So we need to be looking at city as well as state resources in order to improve our transportation issues as we go forward.
Thank you very much. I'd now like to address one that's out there on the table that a lot of people we've received questions on and much concern, and that is aquifer protection and the defunding that is occurring at the city level on the sales tax. And I'll go ahead and Christine, if you could address that first.
Yes, aquifer protection is extremely important. People have asked me along the campaign trail what my position on aquifer protection was, and whether I thought that we had to choose between mass transportation and aquifer protection. And my answer was that we shouldn't have to make that choice, that both of those were important. But given if we had to make a choice, then we had to protect our water. With the sales tax project ending next year and it not being on the ballot this year, we had no opportunity to renew that project. And so I think it was important that City Council take steps in order to fund or find another funding source for aquifer protection. Now, I'm not exactly sure at this point if the position that the city took was the right one given this time, but I'm glad that they've stepped up and they've made allocations for aquifer protection because it's something that we need to protect long term.
Okay, and Trish, what is your position on aquifer protection and it looks like the defunding that's occurring?
Super important to the constituents of Precinct 3 is aquifer protection and linear parks. You know, I hear that all the time. I think, let me be blunt, I think it's shameful that the constituents of Precinct 3 don't have the opportunity to be able to vote on the reauthorization of a sales tax for aquifer protection and linear creeks. It is a program that has worked very, very well. So as I look at, the city is now taking on more debt, $100 million over 10 years to be able to fund the aquifer, which at this time right now, the city does not need to be taking on more debt. And I hate to say this, but then they kind of punted to the county and said, we don't have money left for linear parks. So it's sort of like that old commercial, hey, Mikey likes it, let's get Mikey to do it. Well, the county's kind of like Mikey. We don't have the money to be able to do it. And it was a program that worked really well. So why did we leave it? And now we've got this opportunity or this option that they presented. And by the way, like I said, linear parks, let me stress this, are not funded yet. And the county doesn't have the money to do it. So I don't know where we're going to get that money. And so with the other two initiatives that are on the ballot, it's really been poor positioning because it's been an either or proposition that either we take aquifer protection off the table and then we focus on VIA and job training. Well, the mantra that I hear out in the precinct time and time again is all we ever see are empty buses. Now, granted, whether that's true or whether that's not true, they could be at the beginning of a route or the end of a route. That is the perception. And so I think, Mike, people are very upset about the fact that aquifer has been taken off the ballot. And I myself am very upset about it too. And we will dig in over at the county and see what we might be able to find. But I'm going to tell you that is not a given and it is not a guarantee.
Thank you very much for those comments. What I'd now like to do is ask a question for all of the candidates that are here this evening. And this is really the wind-up question for everybody that's here. And we'll just start down at the top of the ballot and work our way down. And so, Steve, Allison, you'll be the first one to answer the question. And that is, what message do you want to give the voters that will be showing up at the polls here very, very soon? Steve, you're on.
Thank you. You know, we're gonna move. There's no two ways about that. The pandemic has put us into a crisis. So strong leadership, strong experience, statesmanship is going to be necessary. I've developed that. I've developed respect and confidence in my peers and colleagues in the legislature. And I think that's going to be important going forward. The ability to work well across the aisle, so to speak, that I've demonstrated time in, time out. And just the respect and confidence, the experience, leadership, statesmanship, actions, not words. And more than that, results. That's what I brought last session, and that's what I'll bring this next session for the good of this community. Thank you.
Very good, Steve. Yeah, 1 minute for everybody. Celina, you're next. Go ahead. What message do you want to give the voters?
Well, thank you everyone for having us this evening. You probably saw my daughter running back and forth, and that's because it's bedtime, right? And she's trying to avoid it. And we know the ways that people avoid some tough things like bedtime. We've avoided, expanding Medicaid. We have avoided protecting women's health. We have avoided fully funding our schools. And as a parent, we know all these tricks. And as a leader, I found decisions and part of decision-making abilities that have allowed me an opportunity to maintain a positive relationship with my daughter so she doesn't hate me for sending her to bed. But in fact, she appreciates the structure and the discipline that's needed in order to have a fully functioning family. That's much like what we have in the state, an opportunity to have a fully functioning leadership that understands that we need to be having these hard conversations, instituting discipline, and making these hard choices, and we have to do it together.
Thank you very much, Celina. We appreciate that. And now moving on to the candidates for Bexar County Sheriff. First of all, Gerry Rickhoff. Gerry, what do you want to tell the voters? Okay, we've lost him. Sheriff Salazar.
Well, as I mentioned before, everything that we're going through as a society, everything that my profession is going through as a profession, and of course what the sheriff's office is going through, this country's seen before. At the end of the day, I believe what's being asked of this profession is just to do better and to be better. And I'm confident that because of the changes that I've made, the processes that we've improved at the sheriff's office, I think we're going to be on the right side of history on this. We've implemented the body camera program. We've increased accountability. We are definitely recruiting and hiring the right kinds of people, not just anybody with a pulse that wants to wear a uniform. We're being very, very selective on who comes in, because after all, our Bexar County taxpayers deserve the best. And certainly that's what we're looking to do. Now, with that being said, I'd love to see us improve pay and morale at the sheriff's office to the extent that we can. But we also understand times are tough, not just for every individual household in Bexar County, but for our overall county government as well. And so what I really want the taxpayers to know is that I've given most of my life, 28 years, to protecting and serving this community, and I don't intend to go anywhere anytime soon. I'm going to continue to serve with honor and distinction the way I have been for the past 28 years.
Okay, thank you very much, Sheriff. Now moving on to the county commissioners. 1 minute left for each one to speak. We're running out of time, and we'll start with Trish DeBerry. What message would you like to give the voters as they head to the polls very, very soon?
So I think the most important message that I can put across to the voters, and especially the Northeast Neighborhood Alliance, is that I am not going to be a seat warmer. I'm going to be a deep diver. I'm going to dig into issues, whether that's appraisal reform, whether that's traffic and congestion, most importantly, whether that's jumpstarting this economy and putting people back to work, because I've got the skill set. I have eaten, slept, and breathed fiscal conservative Republican principles all of my life. That's what I've done. I've created jobs for people. And I really think that the prerequisite for this position needs to be somebody who has met a payroll. When you consider the budget that we're dealing with, somebody that's created a culture for employees, when we talk about what needs to be done regarding the employees over at the county, what needs to be done regarding jail administration, what needs to be done regarding constables' offices, et cetera. I've been a stalwart volunteer in this community. I have volunteered. I have given 100%. As a single mom of 2 teenagers, I've given my all to those teenagers. I've given my all to this community, and I will give my all to this seat. So I think what voters can expect, transparency and accountability. There will be a field office because the precinct is so large to be able to come in there and voice a complaint or concern. But I'm going to be working overtime and double duty to make sure that every taxpayer dollar is accounted for when hopefully I get into the seat. Thank you.
We now ask Christine Hortick to wrap it up for us. Christine?
Yep, thank you. Thank you to everyone at home that took the time to learn about all our different races. It's very important come election season. That's why I'm asking for your vote come November. I'm asking that you allow me to put my almost 20 years of advocating for members of the community to use in Precinct 3. With me as a commissioner, if elected, I will be closing down my law practice so that I can focus 100% on the job. I think that's very important, and I think that's something that distinguishes me from my opponent. I'm also willing to close down my law practice so that there are no issues of no conflicts of interest between my work and my elected position. I want to be the type of commissioner that people know that if there's an issue or concern, that they can come to me, that they can call me, email me, they can come by the office, that they know that I'll be available and that I'll do my best to help them. So I humbly ask for your vote in November. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Christine. And I'd like to now take this time to thank all of the candidates who came this evening to this very important meeting. This is how our voters will know who to vote for, because people ask that question all the time. And I think all of you have done a very good job expressing your positions. And I want to thank you for giving your time, not only for this meeting, but for the whole idea of serving your community. I now ask that we hear from the District 10 City Councilman, Clayton Perry. Clayton?
Well, thank you very much, sir. And this was a great event. Thank you very much to the Northeast Neighborhood Alliance for hosting this. It wasn't easy. We had some technical glitches, and in this day of videos and video teleconferences, it's not easy. So just want to thank my staff and for the Northeast Neighborhood Alliance for pulling all this together and getting this important time together with the candidates so we can make an informed decision. So with that, Raul, can you put up my slides?
it's not too personal.
All right, here we go. All right. Early voting starts here pretty dang quick. And if you're going to be early voting, I want you to understand you're going to be voting on 3 ballot initiatives coming up for this election. If you don't vote early, the voting day is November 3rd. You're going to see these propositions. And if you read these propositions, I read through them and I really didn't understand them. But I put some little side script up there that says Proposition A is for pre-K for SA. Nowhere in that proposition does it read pre-K for SA. So I want to make sure that you as a voter knows that's what you're voting on. You can agree with that or disagree with it. You'll see some articles coming out both in support and against it. And I think I'll have an article coming out here pretty quick as well. So keep a lookout on that. Proposition A is pre-K for SA. One thing to remember, it's for 8 more years of 1/8 cent sales tax, about $40 million a year for 2,000 children. So anyway, that's Proposition A. Proposition B is this workforce development, which is the mayor's initiative to train people that have been either laid off or upscaling their what they're doing and trying to get better wages and that kind of thing for folks that have been laid off during this pandemic. So Proposition B is for the workforce development portion, also 1/8 cent sales tax. So you got pre-K for SA, the workforce development, and there's going to be some articles on that between now and early voting also. And then when Proposition B on this workforce development expires after 5 years, and it's up to a certain amount of money, I think it's $140 million, then VIA is going to roll in right behind that to take that 1/8 cent sales tax. When Proposition B, the workforce development, expires, then VIA is going to take that 1/8 cent sales tax. Let me see if I get this word right. In perpetuity. That means forever. So anyway, after that 5 years, then it's got that 1/8 cent sales tax that went to workforce development will roll over into VIA. So basically, you're voting on a tax 5 years down the road. And there, like I said, there'll be some more articles coming out about that. But anyway, I wanted to make sure that you knew what A, B, and C was because or via Proposition A, because it's really not clear in the words. And I'm not too happy about how these are worded, but that's what we got to live with at this point. So, sir, that's all I wanted to get across, and look forward to our next District 10 meeting. Do we have a date on our next District 10 meeting? Oh, yeah. Are you registered to vote? Check your status. Go to that website. Check it out. And that way you don't have to walk in and try to vote and you can't vote. So very important. Get out there and register. Do we have a date on our next D10 meeting? I don't know, sir. We haven't really coordinated that with you yet, but
October 19th.
When is that?
October 19th.
All right. That strange voice came on. That's Paul Jimenez there. He's keeping me straight. So that will be our next D10 meeting, and we'll have a jam-packed show for you on that one also. So with that, sir, thank you very much for letting me come on. Appreciate it.
Well, we appreciate you, Councilman, for taking the time to be with us as well. I'd like to thank all the neighborhood participants for being here this evening. Let's just all pray that we very soon can all get back together and actually have in-person meetings again, because I know that's something that all of us miss very, very much. With that being said, thanks again to all the candidates. Thanks to the D10 staff for helping us out, and to Councilman, who else is here today? It's been a part of this. Yeah, we'd like to thank everybody else and say we shall see you at the next meeting. This meeting stands adjourned.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank y'all.